Hey guys, it's Ernesto. Happy Monday to you guys. I'm having a fantastic Monday. I hope you are doing the same. I want to say that it is unbelievable that I would have the same problem twice in a row. But this time it wasn't video related. This time it was audio. I had zero audio. And I recorded this entire video. How wonderful to find this out when you're in post and you're all excited to put all this stuff together and you have zero audio. And then you gotta go record the whole thing over again. But I look at it this way. I might have some new golden nuggets to add in this video that I didn't add on the previous one.
Took me a couple of tries to get that one.
You must be wondering, what am I doing with this sword? Well, you will find out after this intro. If you guys want to submit your image to be critiqued, please join our Facebook group. It's called Fine Art Photography and Modeling. In that group, I created a specific thread where you could submit your images to be critiqued. So hey guys, welcome back. We have an image submission from Rico. Rico is a local photographer here in North Carolina. He does some awesome work when it comes to composite. He's a great photographer, great guy, very funny, but he have a very dark side. If you ever check out his work, you will see what I mean. So we had some image submissions from people from the West Coast to Texas to Portugal. So it's great to have a local photographer who I know personally submit his image. So I certainly appreciate that, Rico. Thank you very much for submitting your image. So now, let's jump into this photo critique. Let's start with lighting. For lighting, I always like to figure out where the direction of light is coming from. Now with this particular image, I don't really have to figure it out because Rico, when he submitted this image, he also submitted the lighting diagram for this image. So in this image, we have two gridded soft boxes behind the subject, and we have a beauty dish in front of the subject. If you're not familiar with this 3-light setup, go and look up a photographer by the name of Joel Grimes. He's well known for this technique. He's a very famous photographer in the industry. And what he does with this 3-light setup is he uses this 3-light setup to help cut out the subject out of the background and basically add a new background in the image to create what's known as a composite. Now, the reason I bring this up is because Rico has a similar style with this 3-light setup, and Rico also does compositing. So for this lighting setup, there's really not much to critique with respect to the lighting. The lighting, he has it nailed. The only thing that I would say with respect to the lighting is the light that's on the sword. I don't know if our focus is supposed to be on the sword or if it's supposed to be on the subject. My guess is probably supposed to be on the sword because on the sword, that's the brightest part of the image. And the fact that in post, Rico specifically put that light on the sword, because if you look at the before image, on the before image, that light is not there. So he put that light in post. So I'm guessing the reason that light is there is so that you could draw the viewer's attention to the sword. That's my assumption, and not necessarily to the subject's face. So now let's talk about the pose. Because the subject is wearing a mask and you can't really read the expression on the subject's face, you really can't get a sense, as a viewer, you really can't get a sense of how you should feel with respect to this image. You know, if you should feel sad, happy, angry. You can't really tell how you should feel because the subject has a mask on. And her body language, you can't really read her body language to tell you how you should feel either. For that reason, because she's wearing a mask, her body language needs to express that emotion to the viewer to give it more of aggressive feeling, more of a, a sad feeling. The body needs to basically express that. And right now her body is just neutral. It doesn't really tell me, if she is happy, sad, or what. It doesn't really tell me what I would need to know from a viewer perspective. So I feel from a viewer perspective, I just feel that the pose is a little bit neutral. So the other thing I would like to talk about is the use of the sword and how to properly hold the sword. Now, before I go into that, I just want to mention that there was a photo shoot that I did maybe last summer or 2 summers ago. I don't remember, but the video is here. Go and check it out. It was called the geisha shoot. And in that shoot, I utilized this sword. And when I was using this sword, my wife came over to me and said, "You do realize that you have the model holding the sword incorrectly." So I had the model holding the sword in the similar way this model is holding the sword, like this. And the reason she pointed this out to me is because I guess no one will actually hold a sword in this fashion to engage in combat, right? Usually when someone have a sword, it's, probably to engage in combat, and they wouldn't utilize it in this fashion. So she told me to change my position, and the position I changed it to is in this fashion, which is the more appropriate way for someone to hold a sword, especially if they're gonna go and engage in combat. So my only suggestion would be, with respect to this pose, is to utilize this, hold the sword in this fashion. Now let's talk about the composition. But really, there's nothing really to talk about because the composition is perfectly fine. So let's move on. Don't hate me. I'm about to talk about a subject matter that I don't normally talk about. I'm actually quite embarrassed to talk about it. Actually, I'm not really that embarrassed, but I really don't talk about it. And it's post-production. In this particular image, Rico utilized a vignette. Now, there is nothing wrong with utilizing vignettes. In fact, I utilize vignettes in 90% of the images that I use. That's a fact. If you don't believe me, go and check, you will see. But you will notice with the vignettes that I utilize in my images, I try to be a little bit subtle with it. I don't try to make it that obvious where the viewer knows that there's a vignette in the image. I utilize different types of vignettes. The one vignette that I utilize for the most part is just darken out the outer edges of the frame a little bit, just to concentrate the viewer's attention to the subject, whatever the subject is that I'm trying to concentrate the viewer's eyes to. I also utilize desaturating the edges if I want them to focus on a particular color in the image. So these are just different types of vignettes that I utilize. But for the most part, I try not to be too heavy with the vignettes because I don't want the viewer to actually realize that I'm using a vignette in the image. I just want them to focus on the subject. That's all, right? So in this particular image, I noticed that there's a vignette immediately by looking at this image because the vignette is pretty heavy. Now that could have been Rico's intent. In fact, I believe that probably is his intent because the vignette was not there in the before image. It is there on the after image. The only thing I would suggest is to reduce the vignette just a little bit, just to make it a little bit subtle so that it's not so evident to the viewer, because you want them to view your subject, not necessarily pay attention to what's going on the outer edges. You want them to look at your subject. So that to me was just a little bit distracting. Not a big deal, but just a little bit distracting. Now let's get to the most exciting part, which is actually rating this image. Light. I gave this image a 4 with respect to lighting. Pose. From a posing perspective, I gave this image a 3. Composition. From a compositional perspective, I see nothing wrong with the composition, so I gave this image a 5. Post-production. This image received a rating of 4 for post-production. Overall, this image received a rating of 4. So guys, it was extremely difficult for me to review this image. Very difficult. The reason it was difficult, it wasn't because I had to re-record this entire video. It was because the image was so good. I found it very hard for me to find elements in this photo to say, this should be changed, that should be tweaked, because it was specifically put into the image by the artist. I know this because he put it in post. He showed the before and he showed the after. He put these elements within the photo. So as an artist, to come in and critique another artist, especially since he put these elements in the photo on purpose. So it's not a mistake. It's something that he wanted to do. So that's why it was very difficult for me to come in and critique someone else's work. But I hope that Rico and you guys still got something from this critique, and I hope it was helpful. If you guys enjoyed this video and you got some information from it, please hit that thumbs up button. Please share this video with your friends and family, and please put some comments down below. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you agreed with some of my suggestions, or if you have some helpful suggestions of your own in addition to what I already said. I would love to hear what you guys have to say, so please drop those comments down below. This is a learning experience. My goal here is to help the image creator and also hopefully help you guys in the process. So just as a reminder, these video critiques are published every Monday, so don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you get notified every Monday when these videos are released. Also, we have tons of full-length photography videos on this channel about posing, lighting, composition. So subscribe if you want to see more. So that's it, guys. I'll see you next Monday.